Good.
It's getting better and better.
Yeah.
I'm
enjoying being on.
Getting looser.
I'm almost better.
Yeah.
Welcome back. As promised, in this episode, we're going to talk about ingredients for beer and how beer is made. Hi, I'm Sean, aka Wizard. More of that in a minute. But what I'm here to do is introduce a new series called Drinking with Wizard. We're going to be talking to a lot of brewers, a lot of breweries. We're going to talk about styles of beer. We're going to be all things beer. And then maybe we'll find some other things out too. So stick with us and hopefully you'll have a fun time like we do. I suggest we're going to be a lot more educational. We're going to be a lot more funny if you drink along with us. Okay, so in beer, there's basically 4 ingredients. Beer can be considered pretty simple with these 4 ingredients, but we'll get more complicated in a second. First ingredient is water. Water is actually a very, very important process or part of the brew process. It's always underestimated, but it is about 90 to 95% of the beer, so you have to have good water quality. Most breweries take a lot of time developing their water system, either adding minerals, taking minerals out, or doing some kind of filtering. Reverse osmosis is always very big, but I digress. You're going to fall asleep if I continue with the organic chemistry now. So we move on. This is grain. This is two-row. This is a base malt that usually goes in just about every beer. The next ingredient is hops. Hops can come in a variety of different ways also. And there's a ton of different hops, and this is really where the flavors come. All you IPA junkies, you know about hops, and there's a bunch of different hops. So the final ingredient is yeast. There's a bunch of different yeast strains too that can create different types of beer, and it actually does convert the boring wort into something yummy goodness we call beer, which we all love to drink. This happens to be a lager yeast. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the lager or the ale yeast or the Belgian yeast. That's why it's probably labeled. So make sure we put the right yeast in each beer. Okay, now that I made it seem relatively simple, let's make it a little more fun and complicated. This is two-row. I talked about that a little bit earlier. This is the base in almost every beer, except for when you're doing a Pilsner, which this is the Pilsner base. So this is for your Czech Pilsners and the like. Then we take this, which is the base malt, and you put this together, which is a Crystal 60, and then you put those together and you get an amber like this. Man, that's good beer. I know who makes that. Or we do something even more crazy. We take this, and put a little bit of this in there, which this is roasted. And maybe we'll throw a little bit of this in too, just for shits and giggles. And this is actually chocolate roast. So base malt, a crystal, roasted, and a chocolate. And actually this will give you some of the ABV, so they will give the convertible sugars, where some of these don't convert as much. That's why this is in there. And that creates a really great stout, like this one right over here. Man, that's really good beer. Cheers to you. Remember, we put hops in everything. Hops is actually a preservative. It was originally used as a preservative way back in the day. Somebody got in their head to put a lot more hops in it to give the hop more flavor than the beer, and that's where pale ales and IPAs came from. So, if I was to put these two together, again, base malt, Crystal 60, and a little bit of hops, that's a pale ale. But this Crystal 60, the base malt, and a whole lot of hops, that's an IPA. I said I was going to start to sample some of the beers and talk about them, and willingly Matt and Dave decided to take one for the team. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
I don't want yours.
We're all drinking a little bit different beers. We talked a little bit about mine earlier. This is a ESB, which is an English special bitter, which is actually an English pale ale. And I gave you a little bit of a reference to a pale ale as being something that's amber in color, and it has a little less hop than an IPA. So it's a balance between the malt and the hops. So it'll have some bitterness, but not as much bitterness as an IPA would. So it's really fresh and enjoyable. It's a balanced beer. It's, again, about, as the last series, the yin and the yang. This one happens to be a wheat beer, which is a lot of the wheat grain, and then it's an interesting twist. There's a lot of wheats, can be basic, but most people put a lot of adjuncts and other stuff into beers, adjunct being something added, an additive to it. Usually it's a fruit, or in this case, agave nectar. So there's a lot of agave nectar. It really, really has a strong almost like a tequila base without, you know, the alcohol part. Okay, so what are you drinking, Matt?
So I have Darth Vader's Imperial Stout, which I probably just ordered because it has a really cool name. So I'll tell you what I think and help me explain what I taste when I taste it.
Go for it.
Oh, that's damn good. It tastes like chocolate in there, and for it being as strong as it is, having an ABV of 13.4%, it's very smooth. Tell me about like what's in there and why is it, you know, drink the way it does.
Well, you're right with the chocolate. It's there's a ton of chocolate in it, which is this grain here. And basically, to get the alcohol, chocolate doesn't convert all that much. It does a little, but to get the alcohol, you have to use something else. And we use a lot of the two-row, a lot of two-row. This was bags and bags and bags of two-row, and it was actually probably almost a bag and a half, 55 to 70 pounds of chocolate in this particular beer. So as you put that much chocolate in, you're going to get a little bit of a roasted flavor. So what are you drinking, Dave, before you drink it all?
Well, unlike what Matt's drinking over there, which is the dark side with the Vader,
Yes.
I more like the light side of stuff. So I'm more of a hazy IPA kind of drinker. So
Okay.
this is a Southie.
Okay.
And it's the light, and when I drink it, I just feel good with it. It's got a citrus, almost banana taste for me. You could tell me a little more of how this to go in my stomach.
Okay. Right. Just so it goes in your stomach nicely.
Oh, that is good.
And past the gums and all that.
By the way, I know who makes this.
Yeah, that's This is a really good IPA. It's a little bit different than a typical IPA. I'm sure most people are now familiar with New England IPAs. Similar in the grain bill, you put a lot of the two-row again. You would have another one that I don't have here, which is probably like Crystal 15 or something with a very mild color. You don't want it to get like this. You want it to be straw in color, so very straw-like. So I know that those are the ingredients. Where the hops, the interesting thing about the hops is there's a lot of hops in it, but they're all at the back end of the brew. So you're not getting any of the bitterness, you're getting all the aroma and the yummy goodness of the flavors of the hops, which these are citrus, and that's actually Citra. This is a big hop that was in it. We've introduced a lot of the ingredients and we've sampled some of the beers to give you an idea of all the different styles there are. Trust me, there's a lot more styles than we've even scratched the surface with here today. So this is what the whole series is about. We're going to go to a lot of different places, see a lot of different people, talk about a lot of different beers, and it's going to be a lot of different fun, and we're going to drink a lot of different beers. So cheers.
Speaking of that, we need to get some new refills.
Yes, we're almost empty, aren't we?
Thanks.
Okay, I promised you I'd teach you how to brew. So here we are. I'm going to teach you as simple as I can and not make it complicated. So here we are at a brewery. This is the brew system, what we're looking at right now. And this, baby, is the beginning of everything that's important. Actually, this is the most important step for me. One of the most important steps of brewing that happens right here at the mash line. So what happens is we bring in and we pour in the grain. We've already cracked it. We're pouring it in. We're putting in 170-degree water to try to mash it with the grain, and I'm stirring, and we stir, and we're putting about 600 pounds of grain in here at some point. And that's like, if you ever did cement, that's what this is like. When you're shoveling cement or you're mixing cement, this is like a big cement mixer, and I'm doing all the mixing. So that's where I get this receipt. I'm hiding it right now behind the shirt, but trust me, I got it. It might not be a six-pack, but I'm close. So you just mash it. You mash it in, and you mash it until you get all the grain in, and you have to hit exactly the right, precise temperature. Well, there's a range. You have to be between about 150 and 154. The sweet spot is 151 to 152. Why is that important? Because that's where the conversion of the sugars comes out of the grain. And we want as much sugar out of this grain as we can. And so that temperature happens. If you're low, you're not going to get all the sugar conversion. If you're high, you're still not going to get the conversion, and you might get some funky flavors. So, after I stir it in, come out, shut this lid, and we just kind of chill and relax and let it do its thing for an hour. So my take on this, for a simple take on it, is this is actually like a tea bag. So if you ever see the tea bag at home and you want some really robust tea, Well, you let the tea bag sit in the water, in a hot water pool. But what we want to get here is all the sugars. But we're not only getting sugars. If I have roasted in there, if I have caramel in there, it's all going to come out. All the flavors of the beer is coming out along with the ABV, or it's not really ABV at that time. It's the sugars. We want as much sugar as possible with the flavors that I put in. And after an hour, we're done with the mash tun, and we're going to move on to the kettle. At the kettle. Another important part of the brewing process is right here in the kettle. So what happens here is we bring the wort up to boil, and it's like making soup. If your grandmother made soup, your mother made great soup, you can make great soup. They can all make good beer then, I think. It's 60 minutes of really, really goodness, yummy goodness. So what happens is, we bring it to boil, like I said. So just picture the steaming and getting ready to boil over, all kind of activities going on. So that's when we start to add the ingredients. Most of it's going to be hops. Every beer has hops. There isn't a beer that doesn't have hops because hops are preservative. Now IPAs have a lot more hops. Even a wheat beer or something else very light still has hops for preservatives. But so say this is an IPA. So at 60 minutes, I'm putting a heaping, helping handful of hops in here. I'm lifting it up, I'm throwing it in, it's boiling, it's smelling great, and there's 60 minutes. So there's different levels and times that I want to put stuff in to make this taste really good. So it's 60, maybe 30, maybe 5. And there's other stuff I put in along the way. Sometimes I put honey in. Sometimes we put peppers in. We talked about pepper beers last show. So in probably 30 minutes or more, depends on how much pepper and how much heat I want to put in, I put peppers in. I'll put oranges in. Whatever it is, it all goes in here, just like soup. Whatever you want to put in it to make that characteristic flavor is happening right here, right now. And then at the end of 60 minutes, we're done. And that is a flavored wort. It's not beer yet. We'll get there. That happens over there in the fermenter. So now we're at fermenters. Fermenter is where the magic happens, or the wizardry, really. This is where wort that we've made over there in the kettle, through the mash tun, into the kettle, and over to here. This is where magic happens. And this is where it turns from actually science to Mother Nature. Once it's in here, we pump it in through some big hoses and a pump, and it's in the fermenter. And it's actually probably, at the time I would do this, it's cold like this. So the beer comes in, it's not beer yet, the wort comes in, and we put it into the fermenter, and then we pitch the yeast. Remember the yeast I showed you earlier in the small glass? We would come up, we'd pitch yeast, it would be ale yeast, lager yeast, wheat yeast, or Belgians, whatever, to flavor profile it. And that yeast is actually going to be at a right temperature, 70, 65 degrees, depending on the yeast we use. And that's going to convert. All the yeast does is eat sugar. The yeast eats sugars, and there's two byproducts. And the two byproducts are very important to us. One, it's gas, which is CO2, and the other is alcohol, the beauty of alcohol. And that, after a couple weeks, creates beer. The beer has already been in here a few days, and what we do, actually the night of the brewing, or the day of the brewing, what I would take is an original gravity. I would pour this in, and I would get a nice fill of beer. And since this is buzzed off, that should actually sit really high. So that should have hit about, should have showed about 109 or 1085. But now that it's almost done, we're going to measure another gravity, and that gravity is down to 1020. What does that mean to you? That just means the conversion of sugars. Sugars make it float. So when it's 80 or 90, that means there's a lot of sugar in it. When it's down to 20, that means a lot of sugar's left, but it's not where we want it to get to. We want it to get to lower. It should be around 15 or 12 before it's actually done. So it's not quite done, but it'll get there. And when it's done, it should be a really, really sweet double IPA. I don't want to waste this. This is beer right now. That's going to be a good batch. I'm telling you. After it's done, the next thing we do is we put CO2 on the fermenter and increase the bubbles. We create, again, the yeast did a little bit of work for us, but not enough. Not enough for you to drink at the tap. So we infuse CO2 at the fermenter, and then we push it into kegs. And those kegs, between half barrels or sixtels, then come into the cooler, and this is where it happens. This is where you get to partake in the beers. So check it out. This is still house full of it. Look at all that beer. Look at all that beer that we've made. It's stacked up, ready to go, all conditioned, all ready, all carbonated, and then it just goes right to the taps, really close to the wall, all good. This is how brewing is done. Every single brewery does it similar, and you're going to really enjoy coming with us on these tours of breweries to see what they do individually to make beer come to you. We're at the finishing part. We're enjoying the fruits of our labor. Everything that we talked about earlier, this is what it's all about. This is the beer, the nectar of the gods. This is what is fun. This is wizardry at work. So cheers to this.
Cheers.
Cheers to you. So this is what we're going to be about. We're going to get more fun. We're going to have more fun, more laughs, more frivolity, more beers everywhere we go. We're on to the next brewery. We're on to another brewery. You're going to want to watch us. You're going to want to see the beers we're drinking. You're going to want to come to those breweries after we're there. This is going to be a really lighthearted, fun show. I did the heavy lifting early. From now on, you're going to see the real Wizard. You're going to be drinking with Wizard. Everybody's going to be drinking with Wizard. You want to see the next one and the next one after that. And by the 10th or 15th show, look the hell out. This is going to be a party happening. Cheers to that. Cheers to you. Stay tuned for the next one.
Just down to Vader.
I know, baby. Hey, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on all things Drinking with Wizard. See you next time. Cheers.